The employee experience, ping pong tables, beer on tap, unlimited vacation, wellness stipends, employee resource groups. These benefits all promised the next gen of the employee experience. Yet all that glitters is not gold. Employees are asking for more from their employers. On the surface, the request is pretty straightforward. Employees just want their employers to give a shit. On today's episode, my guest, Lee Lee Ennis, dives into the simple art of just giving a shit.
I'm locked in. Good.
We're locked in. We're loaded. The news is I hit record because I knew some good punchline was going to come from you saying something as you completed that task.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm locked and loaded. I'm ready to go.
Honestly, though, that's like my favorite thing about work, like getting to work with you and spending time with you, is that you are legitimately always are locked and loaded. And like, it could be on the most benign topic ever. It could be like wallpaper.
I'll double down. I'm just like, I'm in. I'm committed, you know?
I love that.
I'm nothing if not committed.
Amazing. I am so excited to see your face always whenever we get to hang out. And I'm so honored that you get to come here and you've spent your busy day spending time with me here on Connected Brand. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I always love seeing your face as well and talking to your, honestly, one of my favorite people to talk to. So thanks for having me.
Oh, this whole series is just turning into like the big love fest with all the guests. So I'm just like, oh my God, I love you, but I love you.
I do. I love you.
Well, we should let folks know who you are so that they too can fall madly in love with you as well too. Tell them, what's your introduction? You are Celine Dion. No, just kidding. Sorry.
Lover of Celine Dion, Lil Wayne, Britney Spears. No, I'm Lee Lee Ennis. I'm an HR professional and have been for over a decade now. Currently the head of HR over at Visual Concepts, which is a development gaming studio. Mom of two awesome kids. In LA based, but New York born and raised.
Yeah. So you got the style and flair and panache of LA, but you got the attitude and sass and the opinions of the New Yorker. It's the perfect blend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Speaking of the perfect blend, one of my all-time favorite HR leaders, just hard stop. And it's because your take on the role that people leadership and people operations and HR should have in an employee's life cycle was a breath of fresh air. You were a breath of fresh air. You were just so fun to get to riff with. But you as a professional too were just such a breath of fresh air because your perspective was shockingly that employers should care about their employees and do something about it.
What a concept, right?
What a concept. Wild.
That is absolutely how I feel about in the workplace. I just love human connection and the human experience and listening to other people's and sharing my own. And so I always found it so interesting to now be within the four walls of a company and to have access to all of these great minds in your employees, right? And all of these beautiful, brilliant, maybe sometimes even not so brilliant ideas, but just ideas and opinions and thoughts and feelings from all these people, and to not prioritize all of that as a business leader when considering your business and your business goals and how you were going to operate. And so, I did always try to just have that connection, right? Have how a business operates so anchored to the employee experience.
You work in a space where that psychological safety, right, helps to unlock this creative epicenter that is at the core of your company. You have a lot of scientifically centered and engineer-centered individuals, but you also are complemented by the art form and artistry of what your company is creating. And first off, the hybrid of two very distinctly different left brain, right brain audiences that you're trying to help, achieve their best performance. and still while preserving the quality of experiences that you're creating for folks. Like, that's a tough role to play, to, be the facilitator of authenticity, right? Of connection within an organization.
Gaming is so interesting too. I've been with my company for, excuse me, going on 4 years now. And it's my first time in the gaming industry. And it is really different because while I've dealt and worked alongside and supported client groups like your tech and your product people, it's nothing like a core like development group of software engineers and people that truly build the product, right? And they are this like really like analytical kind of no BS, the things that they care about and they prioritize and what's important to them and what they're motivated by is so wildly different than your salespeople, for example, or your art department, or your non-development roles like your recruiting and HR folk. And
Yep.
it's a little bit like herding cats, right? When you're trying to like figure out what everybody needs, and find the central voice of the employees, which is part of the job. Because you just have this wildly different group of people that are motivated by different things and have different needs and communicate differently. So yeah, it's gaming is for sure interesting. It's been a new experience where I've gotten to learn quite a bit over the last few years.
I can imagine. I mean, I think one of the things, so I did a brief stint in people operations, as you know. It feels a lot like herding cats. It felt like herding cats a lot.
Yeah.
And turns out I'm not a great cat wrangler, so I'm just going to stick to marketing. But the interesting thing that I find about HR professionals, especially, this concept of connected brand, HR professionals are the through line, is the connectivity of what a brand stands for, with their values, with their actions, with their mission. And it's a really important through line that so few organizations think about, as HR being a very vital ingredient to facilitating the brand in action. And you've always embraced that. It felt so naturally to me, but I'd love to hear how you came to that awareness and how that actually became part of your marquee HR professionalism.
I think that thank you, first of all. It started to sort of infiltrate in the workplace and in my career, and in how I operated professionally. But it really just goes back to that philosophy, that belief that we have such great resources in our people. And it's so funny, not to get too off topic, but HR.
I love a good tangent, so
I
let's
love a
please get
good,
off
just
track. Let's
like
go
totally.
off-roading here.
It's so interesting because HR has gone through this. We continue to like go through this rebrand, right? Of like,
Mm.
we're human resources. No, we're human relations because people aren't resources. No, we're a people team. We're people operations and we're people experience. And it's like there's such an identity crisis, I think, across HR over at least the last 10 years, probably even longer.
Oh, definitely.
But I never, and this is strong opinion, hot take,
Love
never
this. Strong
had,
opinions, loosely
like,
held. Let's
here
go.
it comes. I never had a problem with human resources because I truly believe that the people of your company, they are one of, if not your greatest resource
Mhm.
as a business leader, as a C-suite team. Yeah, you get phenomenal when you're tapped in. Um, Feedback and ideas, and it's like, I know this sounds so cliche to say, but they're the foundation of your company, the people that work there. Whether they're out making sales or they're, developing code for something or whatever their role may be. And so I knew that it was so valuable to build a great team and to keep that team engaged and motivated
Totally.
and to rely on them for how are we moving forward? What's our goal for the business? What's our idea? Why are we doing this? Why are we still doing this as a business? And your product, obviously, I don't want to minimize the importance of your product, right?
Of
Or
course.
your service, but it's the people of the company that it was so, to your point, natural for me to see the value in the people.
Mhm.
And I have always found myself to be, I'll say, persuasive when it comes to,
Yes.
engaging business leaders.
Yes. Persuasive is a great way to put that. That's a good marketing spin.
There you go.
Passionate and persuasive.
There you go. I'm persuasive. And so it usually feels very easy for me to connect the dots for business leaders on why their employees are as valuable as they are and why they should be considered as such and treated as such.
Mhm.
I never thought that it was like such a fresh idea. It seemed, like I said, so natural to me, the importance of your people and how connecting your people to the purpose of the company and then again to your brand, they help create your brand, your employees. So yeah,
Mm.
I don't know that I have like a secret sauce answer to it. It just always felt so obvious to me, the importance
Yeah.
of your people.
What is so interesting though is like in as you're talking about that human resources, like you like the resource piece is what we've emphasized for so many years. The Industrial Revolution was like, you're a resource, you're a step function. I plug you in, I get something out, and that output is some sort of capitalistic, return,
Yep.
right? But the human piece, I think, is really at the crux of what you care about. And it's because you genuinely care. You lead with authenticity and you genuinely, authentically care about the humans who do happen to be a very vital resource for a company's ability to succeed. Right? Is
I
that a good way to say it?
Yes, it's spot on. And I was just going to say, I think I've always felt okay acknowledging that they were a resource to the company, but that they were humans. I prioritized the human, and so
Mm,
I was okay and felt justified in saying this human is a resource to the company, but before they're a resource to the business, they are human and need to be,
fundamentally.
treated obviously as such. I say obviously, but maybe to some businesses not as obvious.
Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of businesses that are coming to an awakening, right? Like
Yep.
we saw during COVID, one of the many rebrands that HR had, and the role that HR played was employee advocacy became
Mhm.
a really important role in an HR's day to day, and this was about the well being and safety and security of the team and of the company. It
Yep.
was also about the emotional safety and security of the company as we were dealing with racial tensions. We were dealing with a global pandemic. There was just so much put on the plates of folks who had to navigate true human interpersonal needs,
Yep.
right? And it became a really interesting tension for companies who didn't show up in those moments and didn't represent the brand that on the inside that I
Yep.
feel like many of them displayed on the outside.
The pandemic was so, I mean, so impactful, right? Not obviously beyond just for businesses, but just for people. It was something that and people, you would hear everybody say these are unprecedented times and uncharted territory,
Oh
right?
my
And like,
god.
I know you
If
heard it like,
I like
I know.
marketers, this is the worst marketing you ever saw was now more than ever.
But now that we're sort of like on the other side of it, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I was so sick of hearing it, said like that as well.
Yeah.
But like now that I can take a step back, right? And you're not like in the eye of the storm, it was such chaos because we had no blueprint, right?
Never.
As
Nope.
business leaders, as people
No HR
managers.
conference in the entire world had pandemic planning and racial riot like protocol at
Yes.
all. At all.
Yes, it was, and it was just this, and I have said this before, amongst groups of friends and other HR professionals. If you made it through the pandemic as an HR professional and you're still in it, you're still an HR professional, you're a lifer. You're like, this is what you will be doing forever.
Yeah.
Because HR did have this vital role of figuring out what are we doing and how are we supporting our people. But then there was also the other end of it, right? Where it was that need to persuade, convince, influence your business leaders in a way
Mhm.
that you really never felt that same pressure to before, how we needed to prioritize our people.
Yeah.
And it was pure chaos, as an HR professional, especially as an HR leader, where you were leading your team, but then leading them to help support the entirety of the company. It was a lot.
It was absolutely no small feat for anybody who worked in HR at that
No.
point in time, because what I find to be such an interesting position for HR leaders is that you're at the crossroads of the revenue generating mechanism that is the organization's growth trajectory, right? Like you have to prioritize the growth, and you are here to help make sure that the humans who are a resource to your growth potential are helping to reinforce where you're going and growing,
Yep.
while also still prioritizing the fact that well-being and, health and the basic needs of your team were just as important of a priority, while also, by the way, dealing with all of the circumstances in your life, like you mentioned your daughters, like taking care of your children and like,
Yeah.
like navigating your own life while keeping the train on the rails to keep things moving forward.
Yeah. It's arguably the hardest, most challenging part about being in HR, but it is also one of the most rewarding things about HR that first of all, I love responsibility, right? Like selfishly, I love finding creative solutions to problems. I was always like terrible at math and science, but like people problems, I'm just like, yeah, give them
Yeah.
all to me.
Any issue I ever had, I was like, Lily, how do I approach this? I don't know what I'm doing here. Yeah. You're the best solution architect for life
Thank
problems.
you.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me, right? And also because I genuinely care about these people. So it's not just like I can isolate, the problem and try and solve for that. But when you have a deep care and consideration for the people that you're supporting,
Mhm.
it's like you just want to, right? So I love fixing and solving problems to the best of my ability. But I have always said that if you're a great HR professional if you can strike the balance between what is best for the business and what is best for the employee.
Yep.
And those two things often contradict one another, which is where so much of the challenge comes in. That it's like, you think about layoffs, right? Just like at baseline. You think about layoffs and it's obviously so impactful to the people that are being laid off, right? And as an HR professional, you sit in these meetings one after the other, and like you are really close to the impact that it has on the person.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so there's no way that you can, when I look myself in the mirror, there's no way I don't pretend to say, well, this is what's best for them. And, afterwards they're going to find the job that, changes their life. And this is, the best thing that's ever happened to them. I don't like pretend to go down that road. It is a really difficult thing that you are doing. You are impacting somebody's life by telling them they no longer have a job here. Right.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to find the way to come from a place of still truly caring about these people as they exit your business and finding a way to be as supportive and considerate and intentional
Mhm.
as you should be when considering a human being.
Mm.
But on the other end of that, you do know that this is what is best for the business, and I put it in quotes because that sort of, that's a really fluid statement, right? But at
Right.
that time when the decision is made to, go through a riff or a layoff, it's what the business needs. They
Right.
need to reduce their operating expenses. They need to, make sure that their resources and, their business goals are aligned.
Mhm.
So finding a way to strike that balance is one of the most challenging pieces of HR, but it's genuinely, you know, it's the puzzle that I love solving for.
Yeah, and what we talked a lot about in preparation for this, we talked a lot about the supporting executiveship and leadership that helps your ability to navigate that really tricky situations, right? Because we went through this era where growth at all costs, like grow, hyper growth, all these things. And it turns out growth has a cost, right? And when the economy comes to a grinding halt or is flirting with recession, but we've never actually entered a recession, and we start to make some constraints, that growth at all costs has a cost, and it's people.
Yep.
It's the families that they're supporting. It's the loved ones that, they're trying to just make ends meet. And so I'm super curious, as you've worked with lots of different types of leaders, what are some of the attributes and characteristics of leaders that make it super easy for you to collaborate with them and be on the same page about what the priorities are and how to problem solve for the best interest of both the company and for the employee?
I've worked with all different leaders.
I've been there for at least one.
Yeah, yeah. I have worked with many different leaders. And you said something earlier, sort of this idea of like that they want to do, right? They like put their best foot forward, or there was, sort of all these like initiatives is like we need to like, take care of our employees, and, especially during the pandemic. And I know a lot of other
Mm.
people in the workforce, especially HR leaders, have a lot of questions about like what happened to that, right? Like where did all of that care and consideration go? There is, I would say, some of the best leaders that I have ever worked alongside, worked for, collaborated with, through the lens of like prioritizing their people,
Mm.
have always been really intentional, right? So it's so easy when you're a business leader, I think, to make decisions quickly, right?
Yeah.
Or to react to whatever it is that may be in front of you. And I think that there is something to be said about, especially again, when you're considering, like when you're talking about, again, going back to layoffs or these decisions that are really going to impact the people of your business, to not just have it be about the bottom line, to not
Mm.
just have it be about saving money, to really consider from all angles, not just in this moment, but let's think 3, 6, 12 months down the line. So when you talk about something like hypergrowth,
Yep.
you have a lot of business leaders that will go through this. Okay, we've got a lot of money, we've got a lot of, opportunity here, and we've got this really long runway, and we've got these ideas for like our product roadmap, right? And we're going to go and we're going to hire, like now is the time and place, right? Strike while the iron is hot sort of
Yep.
mentality. And they go and they hire like crazy because that's directly what's in front of them. And especially, right, they build up like their recruiting teams, and they're like, we need to, hire, we have 500 open recs. And so we need a team of 40 recruiters to be able to execute on this goal, and so on and so forth. And then sometimes as quickly as within 6 months, something has shifted, because that is the nature of business, especially when you're talking about the tech industry or the gaming industry, all these SaaS
The
companies.
economy, the global economy has changed. The local economy has changed.
Yes.
Your clientele, your market has changed. A competitor has entered the arena. Like
Yes.
so many variables that you cannot control.
That could so quickly derail or throw something off course, or even just impact it in a way where it's like, oh, those 500 people that we just hired, we really only need 125 of them, right?
Yep.
So now you are forced as a business leader to be put in this decision to make another decision, and you're probably going to do that one quickly too, right? Because it's this need to respond, right? It's
Yeah.
this desire to, again, strike while the iron is hot.
Right.
And for the work that I do, and when I am partnering with a business leader, that moment where they are able to sort of sit back and reflect on, like, what is this going to mean for us, not just now, but in 3, 6, 9, 12 months, is like a really, I almost want to say it's like a gift that not all business leaders have.
Yeah.
Just sort of sit back for a minute and pause and think about, how is this going to impact us a little bit further down the road.
Yeah.
I would also say that when I work with a business leader that I've had some of like the most successful partnerships with, and I'm in one of those now with my current boss, who's the president of our studio. He is he cares so deeply about the people. I actually don't know that I've ever worked with somebody that prioritizes. He cares about two things. Of course, he wants the game to get made, and he wants it to be made well,
Yep.
and he cares about his people. And I mean in a way sometimes where he even reminds me that why we're doing what we're doing needs to be with the people at the epicenter. And
Wow.
it's like it's pretty interesting because it's not something that I've truly experienced before. I come from that tech startup space. I come from, working for SaaS companies, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, right? There's all these, programs that they have and processes that they have and, whatever it may be. Oh, we offer this, the employee perks,
Mhm.
and it's,
We've kombucha on tap.
yeah,
Enjoy.
100%. We have
Yeah.
kombucha on tap. We have, whatever wellness program. We have XYZ, and it's attractive. Which I also have like a lot to say about that too.
Oh, I'm here for it.
Yeah,
So let's just rip off that Band-Aid.
it's attractive, but it's not sustainable. It's not the thing that is going to keep somebody happy at your company, keep somebody loyal to
Right.
your brand, to your business.
Mhm.
And so I think that's sort of like no bullshit, not just somebody who truly cares about the people, and that's part of why they got into this, right? To
Yeah.
work with a group of people that they acknowledged were going to be bringing something to the table that they, as the business leader, may not be thinking of or capable of bringing to the
Right.
table. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
I mean, it does. I mean, it must be so refreshing for you to have someone on the same side of the table with you, with the same perspective as you,
Yep.
advocating for the quality of life and the quality of experience
Yep.
for the team members on your team, which must be really refreshing. It must be energizing, if anything.
It's wildly different than what I have experienced in the past before. And it's not to, I don't want this whole conversation to be like, it's so hard to be HR. But it's,
It is, though. I've been there. I did it. It is. I just want to
it
say
is,
I'm in marketing now for a reason.
no, because you're so good at it. That's why.
Well, thank you. I'll take that a compliment. I'm better at it than I was at HR. We'll put it that way.
Listen, we all have our strengths.
Exactly.
But it's hard to be HR because again, you represent the business and the company, and it goes back to striking that balance, right? And these are
Yep.
two different things. You're representing the business, meaning the business leaders, the message that they're wanting to put in front of course, their customer, and they're forward facing, but also their internal brand, right?
Yep.
How they represent themselves to the company. And you sit in these rooms sometimes as HR, and you're just like, that's not what we told people at that
Mhm.
last all hands, or,
Yep.
whatever it is. Like what happened to, this program that we were thinking about building, and it's like, oh, we need to cut costs. And it's like, why there? Why are we
Yeah.
starting there with the people? I read this great study actually somewhat recently within the last year. Harvard Business Review did this study.
Oh, that small school up here in New England, Harvard. I've heard of them. I've heard of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure if your listeners have heard of it, but yes. Harvard Business Review did this great study on the return on the investment of investing in your people. So
Mm.
essentially, and it was something like they used this one retailer across 1,000 different locations that they had, and I think it was a few hundred different employees. I'll be happy to share the link with you because I'm sure that you would find it equally as interesting. And
Totally.
essentially, what the data was proving, which is really hard to prove, which all HR professionals spend like their entire career trying to do. What the data was showing is that the more that they invested in their people, and basically the connection between a positive employee experience and profit or revenue for a company. And how when you are investing in your people and you are keeping your employees, engaged and motivated and heard and understood and, making them feel valued, I want to say, without speaking out of turn, that it was something like a 50% increase in their revenue for this
I
business.
do know this study, actually. It's called the service profit chain. Is that the
Yes.
term that they use? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
So
fascinated by this. That's the way you treat your employees is the way you treat your customers. Easy.
so easy, right? And it was, and of course, I should have prefaced by saying these are all employees that are customer facing employees, right? So there is this like really direct, direct line that they have to impact,
Yep.
revenue and growth for the company. But it was no less fascinating. It was but again, as an HR professional, I'm reading this and I'm going, yeah, obviously. What do you
Duh.
mean? You keep your
Yeah.
employees happy and they're going to turn, it's just it's so obvious to me. It's sort of just like the one hand that feeds the other, right? It's cyclic. It's like you have these people that go out, they are advocating for you. They are evangelizing the brand of whatever your business is, and they're proud to work there. And so, of course, their interactions with your customers, they're going to be genuine and they're going to be profitable. It was so obvious to me. But it was just a great study done. You said that you've read it, but I'm happy to link it to you if you want a little
Please do.
refresher on it. Yeah, it's
I
fabulous.
mean, I'm fascinated by the service profit chain because
Yep.
at the crux of it is exactly what a connected brand understands and
Yep.
why I'm fascinated. Yes, I want to create a show or get to talk to people who are way smarter than me and way fun to hang out with, but who are also get the fact that to build a connected brand, your insides need to match your outsides. And by that, I mean your values and how you treat your employees and the brand that you embody in what you're doing there must match the brand that you're putting out and into the world. And the companies who get that right know that the synergy of how they treat their employees is how they're going to treat their customers by extension. And you're right, it is cyclical. It's a regenerative cycle
Yep.
of growth, of revenue, and it comes at being connected. And I have an inside scoop, but as a marketer, my biggest ally within an organization is the people leadership team, the HR team,
Yep.
folks who are directly responsible for the well-being of the employee, such that you care about them and you're reinforcing our values, you're reinforcing our mission and our vision for what we're trying to create out into the world.
I love you've mentioned values, I think like 2 or 3 times, and something really interesting happened during the pandemic. Which is, and again, I speak through the lens of HR, right?
Unless it's about Britney Spears, in which case
Then I
you
just
speak through
speak
the
for
lens. Yeah.
the people.
Very different lens.
I speak as the president of her Long Island-based fan club
Right.
from
Right.
back in the
Yep.
day, but
Yep.
I digress. Through the lens of HR, something really interesting happened during the pandemic, which is that employees, or rather the workforce, became increasingly attracted to a company's values.
Yep.
So it used to be that we would talk about workplace culture, right? So what's the company culture like? And company culture was this attempt to answer the question, how do we do things? And even when it was really hard to define, company culture was hard to define. It was supposed to be this like selling point for a company, right? In their hiring efforts and in their retention efforts. So this is when we were, seeing company happy hours and ping pong tables, right? You and I talked about,
Oh yeah.
the ping pong tables in office, and catered lunches and snack boxes and, all of that stuff, right? And all of these things were literally listed under company benefits on like their company culture, like come work for us page.
Yeah.
But through the pandemic, it was so obvious. I shouldn't say maybe for everyone, but it became obvious for many business leaders that this is not what keeps people engaged, right? It's not what makes people happy or keeps people happy. And
Mhm.
then there was this disconnect between employee loyalty, right? So it was this shift. where it was people cared more or prioritized culture, right? Because that's what was in front of them, company culture. And then all of a sudden, it was the values. What does the company care about? What does the company believe in?
Yep.
The company's value should be its brand. This is who we
Right.
are. This is what we care about. This is what we prioritize.
This is why we exist.
This
Yeah,
is why we
exactly.
exist.
Yeah.
It wasn't always that way, again, through, the lens of HR and recruiting efforts, and they would talk about the DNA of the business, and it was not about the values. There were so many companies that didn't even really have their values defined. And that shifted. People cared way less in an interview about, we have ping pong tables and kombucha on tap, and they cared way more about, how are you supporting my mental health and well-being? What
Yeah.
programs do you have that can support my psychological health and well-being as an employee? And it
Yeah.
was a super interesting shift during the it started to happen before, but the pandemic, obviously, we had everybody working from home, and it just really impacted from how I was seeing it, going from your company culture to your company values. And there's just a different priority on company values for employees now.
It wasn't until you just went through that it came into focus for me that when we talked about company culture, we were talking about how do I fit in here, right? And the shift, it feels like to me in your telling, but also in my observation, has actually been that employees are saying, okay, employer, how do you fit into my
Yep.
life? And that change in juxtaposition
Oh,
has caught some employers on their heels big time.
yes. It's, well, all of our, again, I hate, I don't want to over index the pandemic and the impact that it had, but it really was such an overload of information for us as people leaders. There was so much value in, if we were properly listening and paying attention, right? But
Yeah.
now you had people working from home, right? So let's just take, even in the beginning of the pandemic, everybody's, employees for the most part got sent home, and they're working from home. And now all of a sudden, they're able to do things like they're taking their kids to school if school is still open, or at least they are home now to get their kids set up in front of the computer for Zoom school.
Yep.
They're also able to do things like go to doctor's appointments, because they don't have their commute time anymore into the office. And so their whole lives as the employees changed.
Yeah.
And there was a shift in their priorities. And so it was no longer this, like, I've got to be front and center, at being seen by my boss 65 hours a week in order for them to know that I'm valuable. It should just
Mm.
be that I show up, that it's output, that it's results, that they see that I am doing the work that is asked of me, that I am a loyal employee, XYZ. Now you have this, to your point, it's more about people have reprioritized, and they're saying, my emotional well-being, my mental health and well-being is incredibly important to me, because it was very fragile for quite some time. We really
Yeah.
did not know what was going on. People, again, realigned, readjusted their priorities. They were with family. They were doing things that they may not have had the opportunity to do before.
Hmm.
I'll tell you, I bring my girls to school every morning, right? And I'm very lucky. I'm a fully remote employee just because of where I'm located, and where my office is. Um, at previous companies, I used to wake up at 5:30 in the morning so that I
Mm.
could make sure that I was getting myself ready for the day before, my girls woke up, to make sure that then I can get them ready for the day, to then make sure that I got them off to school, to then get myself into whatever office I was working at between 8:30 and 9, because, God forbid you're not there, one of the first people in the
Right.
morning, because
Right.
that's what the employer, excuse me, cares about, right? And it's about, how do you fit in with the company? Are you the person that's here, first thing in the morning? Can we count on you to be at the coffee machine leading, the morning call? Now, I mean, I would never give up that time that I had. You couldn't pay me a different amount of money. You couldn't, no company perks, no kombucha on tap or ping pong tables especially would
Yeah.
be something that would ever have me deprioritizing that time that I have in the morning with my children, where I'm not rushing through the morning routine,
Mhm.
where I'm not, it is, I'll be online. If there's a call at 9:30, okay, I'll absolutely be there. But my family comes first. And
Absolutely.
the priorities of my life come before this job. And
Mm.
so I think that that was a shift for a lot of people, which then goes back to that. No, how do you fit into my life? Like, how do
Yeah,
you, what
absolutely.
do you bring to the table, business
That's exactly
XYZ?
it, business. In
Yeah.
addition to the paycheck, you should also be accelerating
Yes.
in a facet of my life and help me be a better whole human
Yes.
and not just a better, like, step function for your
Worker
growth
bee.
model.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Totally. What I find also really interesting, so I have a baby sister. She's 18 years younger than me, as you know. She's a junior in college now. She's about to be stepping up as a senior, which is wild.
What?
I know. And
That's crazy.
her generation in the workforce is also not just like what's the infrastructure of my day to day to make sure that I have good harmony in my life. It's also like, what's your political association? How are you standing up and advocating for those that are historically marginalized?
Yep.
Are you going to like boycott XYZ because they no longer support the inalienable rights of women, of children, of
Yeah.
races, of entire societies? And I love that. I think it's only going to push further and further as we really do orient companies to value driven decision making and brand actions.
It's so interesting, the dynamic of having the different, we have something like 5 different generations in the workforce right now.
It's wild.
It's wild.
We've
And I
never had this many generations,
no,
right? In any, yeah.
nope. So, you're sitting in a meeting room, be it virtual or, on-site meeting room, and you've got your baby boomers and your millennials and Gen X and Gen Z and Gen whatever else. I mean, just,
Gen Alpha better not be in that room unless they're there for like take your child to work day kind of a thing. But
but I feel like I'm missing one. I can't remember, there's
yeah, Gen
you
X, Gen Y,
oh, is
Gen
it Gen
Z.
Y and Z? Okay. So it's
Yeah.
okay.
And then Alpha. And we come back around to the top of the batting order at A, Alpha. And then we get to be the millennials. And by the way, elder
I was
millennials at
just about
that
to say,
too.
so I don't know if you know, but we are in a very specific subset of the millennials. We are the elder millennials, which
Yeah,
is
the
like,
amount of like just pure a gap, I'm normally a very eloquent individual, but the elder millennial just I can't.
yeah,
I
it's,
can't.
though I will say, anytime I'm like, I'm not an elder millennial, I'm not, whatever this like time frame of like years like means nothing. And then I will see something, scrolling through social media that's sort of just like a joke or reference to this elder millennial. And I'm like, oh man, I am an elder millennial. That is
Oh yeah.
exactly, yeah. I fit right in there.
I like we can talk about the marketers and how just like bad they did with geriatric like expecting women who are over 35, but they're called geriatric.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
It's a geriatric pregnancy. If you are actually, I have to be honest with you. I want to say that the age just lowered. I'm not certain.
it lowered. Oh, I would have imagined they would have like increased it as to lowered.
No, so meaning like I think that like now if you are 34, it is considered a geriatric pregnancy, which then is also considered a high
As if
risk.
women didn't have a hard enough time just trying to live
Just like to
life. We're
exist.
just gonna
Just like
call them geriatric.
we just want to exist. And now it's like, oh, you have to, which don't even get me started on the scam of like insurance companies, because now your geriatric pregnancy, your high risk pregnancy, which also means that you need to go see a high risk doctor, which your insurance may not cover. Like, so I can't even.
I didn't even know. I didn't even think about this.
Oh, it's like
Oh my
so
gosh.
disturbing.
Like a whole other episode about just how your healthcare actually does not actually remotely support your employees' well-being, but that's a whole other
That
episode.
absolutely, we could do like an entire series on that, because as like a comp and benefits, as the team that also manages comp and benefits, and
Yeah.
that is a whole separate, but
We call that series Comp and Bennies.
you're like very
Anyway,
like quick with just that. I always appreciate that about you.
we can turn off the marketing.
You've got it's the marketing. I love that. We were discussing speaking of your sisters,
Yes.
being
Yes.
in the
This
workforce
emerging
now.
workforce.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're in a room now with 5 or so different generations. They possess wildly different skill sets. They have insanely different ways of communicating, and they're motivated by different things, right?
Mm,
So, this whole conversation we started, we're talking about the employee experience, right?
mm.
And your employer brand. That is a constantly moving goalpost as an HR professional when you are
Totally.
thinking there about all of the different groups of people, excuse me, and how you communicate effectively with them, what they're motivated by, what's going to matter to them, what keeps them engaged. We're not just talking like, hey, industrial revolution, we got all these people that are, they just want their paycheck. They want to come in. They want to make sure, that they're getting paid X amount of money and they got,
Yeah.
that's not, your sister will tell you, she may not work for a company regardless of what the pay is and whatever perks and whatever they're going to offer. If this is a company that didn't make a statement on Roe v. Wade, if this is a
Right.
company being overturned, if this is a company that made a statement that she didn't appreciate or didn't align with or resonate with her about when the BLM movement was forefront and center. This
Yep.
is something that we didn't always have to figure out or navigate in the workplace as business leaders and HR professionals. And again, like I said, now it's just this constantly moving goalpost of what makes a positive employee experience.
Yeah.
You've got 5 different people in a room. They're going to have 5 different answers for you with this
Yeah.
workforce. It's wild.
It's such an interesting dilemma that we're in, but it's also like really opportunistic. Like I see so much beautiful opportunity to meet people where they are
Yep.
and to help them be best versions of themselves.
Yep.
I mean, if you're, if you're a marketing leader or you're just a leader who has a position of authority or power or sway or influence or persuasion, as you put it, like how can we help champion the employee brand experience and partner much more closely with our HR teams?
It's I say ugh as if it's like a
Ugh, don't give me more
oh
work,
God,
please.
don't ask me that. No, it's I don't know that there is any best answer for that. When I talk to my business leaders, the missed opportunity that I'm seeing in the workplace between, leaders, people in a position of, persuasion or influence, the missed opportunity is that there is a lack of trust in the workplace. So this goes back to again some of these like promises that we talked about a little bit earlier on, some of the things that businesses said that they were prioritizing or that were important to them, and then they sort of failed to show up in these areas.
Mhm.
You have a lot of companies that do their employee engagement surveys, right? Like what makes you happy and what needs to change here, and you have managers that do weekly check-ins with their employees and tell me how I can be a better manager for you, and so on and so forth. Companies that hired heads of DE&I over the last couple of years and sort of put their stake in the ground saying we are going to like really bolster our efforts on hiring a more diverse workforce and having programs for inclusion, and then there was not a lot of follow through.
Yep.
Um, and I say we, businesses, business leaders, HR professionals, people managers, we lost credibility.
Yep.
And a lot of employees just lost trust. And
Mm.
so they almost stopped participating in the conversation, um, because there was just really not too much to show for it. I'll give you an example. Again, we go back to a couple of years ago, everybody was sent to work from home, right? And everything was about we want you to feel safe. Go, work from home and stay at home. We want you to know that we care deeply about your psychological safety and well-being. We have created these, sort of like listening groups, and we signed up with Headspace, or
Yeah.
Talkspace, all of these different programs. And now fast forward to it's a couple years later, you have more than 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are requiring that their workforce come back into office. 50% of companies that are
Yep.
without any sort of data or anything on this is how it's going to make us more productive. Like, show
Right.
me the data.
Yeah.
I'm totally on board with, like, if this makes sense for our business and there can be some sort of like hybrid work, absolutely. But you've got companies that are merely just saying, like, you got to come back. Everybody's coming back. Like, Google did it, Amazon's doing it. We're bringing people, we're back in the workplace.
Right.
And what does that actually tell your employees? Right?
Right.
That
Right.
everything that you had committed to them, that you were, infusing into the everyday conversation and the talk tracks and the narrative of, we care so deeply about you. We are prioritizing you. We are a people first organization.
Yep.
And then there just wasn't that follow through. So I
Nope.
think, going back to your question of, what can we do if we have the ability to do anything? It's like a really slow chipping away at a rebuilding of trust. Your employees need to feel like, don't do an engagement survey if you don't plan on actually taking action on it, right? They'd rather not
Go figure.
answer
Yeah.
the 10 question or 40 question, survey if you don't have any plan to actually implement any of those
Yeah.
changes. Stop asking them about their opinion or for their opinion if you're not going to take their opinion into account when you're executing on thing XYZ.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think that what business leaders can be doing, what people managers can be doing, is helping to rebuild that trust. And it's going to be slow and steady wins the race, because, as you know, just in personal relationships, as you know, especially when you're, in marketing and you're trying to earn that trust, gain that trust from the
Totally.
potential customer, it's that buy-in
Months,
is
years. Yeah.
months and years. And it's
Easily.
the same thing with employees, especially once they feel sort of scorned
Once you've
by
already
you,
lost
right?
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, I hadn't thought about it as trust is the commodity that
Mhm.
then currency rather
Yep.
that we were trading in. And we overdrew our account. And now it's time to start putting in some deposits
Yeah.
to build back that trust slowly but surely over and over and over again.
And again, I think it's less about like, oh, promise them more. It's almost like, stop making promises. Start with just like
Yeah.
neutral, like, reset the expectation to
Yeah.
be, just come into work and do a great, come in, meaning log in, come in,
Yeah.
whatever, be at
Yep.
work and just do a great job. Just show up, just bring ideas, and that we can start there, with that being the contract or agreement that we have with these employees.
Yeah.
Stop promising them all of these, again, things that it just we fall short of.
Yeah.
And I say we, I speak just for business leaders and, people that get the privilege of making some of these decisions on behalf of a business. How
Yep.
do we spend our money toward people programs? How do we invest, back into the employees?
Yeah.
So just stop making
Stop
commitments.
overcomplicating something that's very simple.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
people will be proud to work for you because because they're connected to their work, and because you have strong company values that run deep, and that, your commitments are followed through on, and not all this other kind of like, whatever it is, this fluff, these bells and whistles. They're less important to people
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. You just gotta give a shit.
You just got to give
Really
a
what it
shit.
comes down to.
What a concept.
Go figure.
What a concept. I love
Go figure.
it.
Well, for folks who gave a shit about this episode and gave a ton of shits about you, how do they find you? How do they access you? I'm hoping you drop your TikTok handle because it's some amazing content.
My TikTok. Oh yeah. Sure. Go follow my TikTok.
It's worth a follow, friends.
Yeah, I'd be honored. On TikTok, I'm that girl Lee Lee. And same thing on my Instagram. I'm not super active on LinkedIn. I'll be honest. There's so much content on there from business leaders that are like myself that sometimes I find like I'm not sure what I'm adding to the conversation. And it
Yeah.
also just feels like another social media platform that I have to manage that I'm just not really great at.
Yeah.
But I am, of course, at,
You should just pop on there tomorrow and just type like, just give a shit and then just leave.
Oh, I love
hit
that.
comment and then just leave. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you want to see that post, it's, Lee Lee Ennis on my LinkedIn. Please, follow Visual Concepts, 2K Games if you're interested. We got a lot of cool shit going on there.
You really do.
Yeah. Or you can just like give out my number personally to people that are interested.
Great.
I love it.
Perfect.
I love it.
Amazing.
And I love that you give
you.
a shit, and I love what you're doing. And I'm really grateful to get the chance to talk to you.
Always a pleasure. And thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Of course.